a blow. Thought I heard my true love say I'm coming for my bow. Run mountain, run mountain, run mountain, now you get your fill. Me in the field hard at work and taking crows for a day. Me running around with another man's wife, look at me getting away. Run mountain, run mountain, run mountain, now you get your fill. If I had a needle and thread as fine as I could sew, I'd sew my true love to my coat. Down the road I go. Run mountain, run mountain, run mountain.
Good target, and we have 3 targets on our right, 3 targets on the left, and we pulled the lanyard. And every target out there was chopped off about this high off the ground. All those 2x4s just cut in half with the canister round. So, but they carried all the equipment, all the extra equipment that they needed. The site was in here, and we can go forward and I'll show you what this site, how this site actually works.
Yeah.
How are we doing on time here, gentlemen?
We are ready to perform.
So I'm going to
Ready to perform? Cannoneers post! On the limber.
Hi, Paul.
Yeah, we'll go through. Yeah, we're going to go through and we're going to load and shoot one for you.
Okay.
Oh, awesome. I should get my phone down here. Get some pictures.
You got your gloves. Where's Jay's coming up? You got everything you need?
Yeah, Sarah was calling to let us know about the concert.
Where's Ron? You got what you need?
Maybe we're going to take our parking sign out of it.
Well, we're going to go forward from here.
Oh, great. Okay.
Corporal, post them on the gun. Take implements. Attention.
I'm going to wear my skirt though.
Post on the piece. March. Take implement. You're welcome to come forward.
I tried it.
We're not going to hurt you.
I mean, what did you say when I walked downstairs? It was like your old boots or something?
Well, that's kind of the style. But it was
If you're in this area here, you're in good. You're in a good spot. What we brought for you today is our model 1861 10-pounder. This is the Parrott version of the rifle. The range on this one, about 3 miles. The barrel itself weighs 900 pounds. The yoke carriage that it's on weighs another 900 pounds. So as the cannon sits there, that's 1,800 pounds. Back here is the little 2-wheeled cart called the limber. That limber is where we have the first 50 projectiles we're going to fire. The crew is made up of 10 men in the crew. 8 of them were actually in numbered positions, but the first 4 numbered positions were up here on the gun. I'm going to have each man had specific equipment and responsibilities. I'm going to have each man step forward and talk about their equipment and their responsibilities. I'm going to start at the right front with number 1. Number 1, your equipment, your responsibility.
I'm serving the number 1 position today. My equipment is a sponge ram along with a sponge bucket that sits right up front there. My first duty is to clean the barrel after every firing. I've got a sponge end here. I'll dip that in the water bucket and then I'll run that down the tube. Now that both washes the tube of any extra buildup from the previous firing, and it also serves to put out any remaining burning embers that might still be left down there, any chunks that are still smoldering. Now that's important when it comes to the second part of my job, which is to take the powder and the projectile and push it to the rear of the gun. If I haven't done the first part of my job right, I'm going to have a very bad day when I go to do the second part of my job.
Our number 2 position is on the left front of the gun. Number 2, step forward, your equipment, your responsibility.
I'm at the number 2 position today. I have 1 implement and 2 duties. The first duty I have is after the first firing, or every firing, is I'll insert this corkscrew type piece of metal with 2 points on it into the barrel and retrieve any embers or aluminum foil we have to make sure we get out. Because one thing you don't want in the back there is any burning or flames before you put your next gunpowder in. My second duty is to take the projectile and the gunpowder from the number 5 or 7 positions as they walk forward, and I will take it out of their lever haversack pouch. Well, he's not carrying it. But, and I'll put that in the barrel so that the number 1 position can push it to the rear.
During the Civil War, the gunpowder was in a woolen bag, a cloth bag, 1 pound of gunpowder in a cloth bag. Normally that cloth bag burned up in the firing of the cannon, and that worm was rarely used during the Civil War. But today, for safety's sake, our modern gunpowder is wrapped in aluminum foil. It's important that we extract all of the aluminum foil so we don't continue to build up foil at the back of the gun. Number 3, on the right rear of the gun, number 3, your equipment, your responsibility.
I'm the safety on this gun. During the cleaning of the gun, I take my thumb stall that I was issued and put it over the vent. This helps number 1 when he does the cleaning. As he pushes that sponge down, he's pushing out all the air. And you'll hear during our firing, when he pulls it out, you'll hear a big thump. That's the vacuum coming back in, so it helps make sure that there is no embers in the back of the barrel. The other implement that I was issued was a priming wire. It's a brass rod, somewhat pointed on the end. I push this down the vent. First off, the vent is where we're going to put fire onto that black powder. If it's blocked, we can't shoot. So I'm going to put this down the vent to make sure that there's nothing in the vent. But when number 1 pushes that powder charge down back into the breech, now when I push it down, it's going to punch a hole into that powder sack. It's made out of brass because iron on iron, you have a chance of sparks. We don't want to set the gun off prematurely. Brass on iron, no problem. Then when number 4 puts the priming friction primer in, I'm going to hold the line as he stretches that lanyard out. This is part of my safety job. Make sure that if he trips, he doesn't actually set off the gun.
Number 4 is on the left rear of the gun. Number 4, your equipment, your responsibility.
So if you have a safety on a gun, you have to have a trigger, right? So I'm the trigger on the gun. I get to make the cannon go boom. Today I have 2 duties. Typically in the Civil War I only had 1. It was just to make the cannon go boom. But today I'll assist the corporal in sighting the piece. I don't have any specialized equipment for that. Just me and my strong arms. And I'll swing the cannon any which way he directs me to. Then my main duty, firing the gun, I have some equipment for that. First is the lanyard, which is 6 feet long, and it just has a little hook on the end on this side and then a handle on the other. And what I put at the end of that is a friction primer. So friction primer is just a little brass tube filled up with gunpowder and fulminate of mercury. And essentially when I pull the lanyard, I'll be striking a match that will set off that fulminate of mercury and the gunpowder, making an even bigger boom in the chamber of the gun. Prior to the Civil War, they used what was called a linstock. You might see it in all those pirate movies. They'll touch off the gunpowder on the cannon. Doesn't really work very well in rainy situations or windy days when your fine powder blows off the top of your cannon. So this really opened up a whole new world to fighting in whatever weather is thrown in front of you. Hurricanes, tornadoes.
Those were the 4 positions on the front of the gun. Numbers 5, 6, 7, and 8. We're back at the limber. Number 5, why don't you come forward and talk about your responsibilities and the equipment that you have?
Well,
No.
today I've been assigned to position number 5. Position 5 has the awesome responsibility of knowing how to grab the flap on the haversack and lift it up. That's it. I walk up to the gunner then will pull this open to check to make sure that the ammunition that the gunner's asked for is in here. Then again, I keep my hands off it, he puts it down, I go to the front of the gun. You'll notice when we get to that stage, what I'm looking for is I'll be standing by the gunner. As soon as the man on the left raises his hand and the man on the right twists that ramrod around and is holding it like that, that's the visual okay for me to walk forward, walk up to number 2, and again, do this awesome job of opening the flap. He takes it out. I never touch the gunpowder. Once he's got it out, I walk back to get another load.
So, excuse me, so is there a reason why you never touch the gunpowder?
Because the fewer people that touch it, the fewer possible accidents that can happen. We want the gunpowder to be in this leather pouch because we're a prime target during battle, and there can be shells going off around us or close to us, and we want to make sure no fire hits that, then everybody's out of commission.
Number 5 forgot about one of his other most important requirements is he has to know how to walk. And I say walk and I don't say run, I say walk. Some of the projectiles that we're going to put in that pouch are going to be projectiles that have a fuse at the front that is designed to explode on impact. And if number 5 was to run to the front and trip and fall and that shell hit the ground, he could kill everybody in the crew. Now, a good gun crew can load and fire 3 rounds in a minute. I've shortened the distance between the limber and the cannon, and the distance is greater. So we had another man outfitted just like him, number 7. They alternated. Number 5 would be walking back with an empty pouch, meeting number 7 coming forward with a full pouch. And by alternating those 2 men, we can get that rate of fire of 3 rounds a minute. Number 6 was stationed right behind the limber where he's standing right now. He was responsible for making sure the cover on that chest was closed at all times until he needs to get into it to get a shell. He put the powder and the projectile in the bag. If the projectile was designed to explode downrange, he would have to cut the timed fuse to the right length. So there are a number of timed fuses. This happens to be a yellow is an 8-second time fuse. This fuse then is cut to the length of the burn rate. For instance, I know that if I want to aerial burst at 2,000 yards, I have to stick a piece of fuse in the end of the projectile that will burn for 6.5 seconds, because that's how far it will travel 2,000 yards in 6.5 seconds. So number 6 cuts the fuse, puts it in the end, puts the powder projectile in the bag. Number 5 walks forward. Number 8 was typically a corporal, and he was stationed back here, and his first job was to watch the cutting of the fuse. We don't want to have a fuse that's going to burn for 3 seconds and explode 1,000 yards in front of us when we have our own soldiers at that distance. We want to make sure we're shooting over them. So a corporal who has 2 stripes probably understands that a little bit more than a private who has no stripes. So he oversees that. His other job is to make sure that when projectiles are fired out of this chest, additional projectiles are brought forward from the limber with the case on that's 150 yards to the rear. The limber looks just like this one with a chest with 50 projectiles on it. The case on is a 2-wheeled cart that's hooked behind it with 2 more ammunition chests on it. So now I have 4 ammunition chests, 50 in each chest. When the battle starts, I have 200 projectiles on the battlefield for me to shoot with. Those are the 8 numbered positions. There were 2 unnumbered positions. One of them was the corporal. The responsibilities of you, the gunner. I'm the gunner. My duty is to be in charge of all the men in front of the gun, make sure that the rounds are placed on target where they're wanted. I do that by this sight here called a stadia sight. Another sight that was invented during the Civil War, and it has numbers in degrees. The table of fire that's on the chest will tell you whatever the length of fuse is cut for. It may call for 3 degrees, so you would just adjust the sight up or down to 3 degrees. Once it's placed in back of the gun, you aim it like a regular gun. There's a little peephole in the back. You look through this peephole. You look across that blade on the trunnion on the side of the gun. Looks like a screwdriver point. You change the elevation up or down. You would aim directly like you would a regular gun looking through this peephole. On windy days, shots would blow left or right depending on which way the wind was going, even up or down. The older sights look like a pendulum on a grandfather clock. They fit on a bracket in the back and they would hang like this. They had a bob on the bottom. If the barrel went up or down, it stayed straight. If the gun was on a crooked, it would stay straight. But there was no windage adjustment. So if your first shot went to the left, you have to calculate that in your brain and just aim a little to the right of your target or to the left, whichever way the wind was blowing. This sight here, you could loosen this nut and adjust it left or right, so you would just aim at your target every time. You wouldn't have to try to calculate windage in your head. So this piece would fit right in the back. When I call the sight to piece, he steps into, for left and right, I either tap on this side of the trail or this side of the trail to go left or right. If I want to go up or down, I use this wheel here to elevate or depress the barrel. And my hand signal that once the piece is sighted is I put my hands up like this. Because with all the other guns that are firing at the same time, words cannot be heard. So everything is done with hand signals. The 10th member of the gun crew was the sergeant, 3 stripes. He was the chief of the piece. On the battlefield, he was responsible for everything that happened from the front of this gun to the limber with the case on 150 yards to the rear. He was also responsible for the overall training of every man on the gun crew, and he trained every man in every position. So that if I have a number 1 go down, somebody else can step in and do that job. The drill starts with 10 people and it goes all the way down where there's just 2 of you left alive or not wounded. You can continue to fire the gun. We're going to go through the drill now. We're going to go through it twice. The first time I'm going to tell him don't put any gunpowder in it, won't make any noise, just so you can see the drill. The second time we'll be loading gunpowder. Our normal charge is 1 pound of gunpowder for the cannon. Today, because of your close proximity, we're just going to put in a 1/2 pound or a 1/2 charge. With detail, without cartridge, I want the commands. I don't want any gunpowder. Commence firing. The corporal will repeat the command. With detail, without cartridge, commence firing, load. Stop vent. Number 3 steps in, checks to make sure the vent is clear, and then with his thumb stall, his left thumb stops the vent. Worm. Number 2 comes in and checks for any debris that might be left from the previous round. The first, wet sponge. Number 1 steps in, dips his sponge in the bucket of water, shakes off the excess water, the first cleansing of the tube. Worm! This step was skipped during the Civil War, but because of the aluminum foil, we have to do it. Dry sponge. The final cleansing of the tube. Watch what he does with the sponge ram when he's done. He's going to tell us the round is clear, the tube is clear. Round forward. Powder and projectile are walked forward by number 5. Number 3 takes it out of the pouch. Insert charge. Powder and then projectile are incited inside the tube. Ram charge. Taking great care, the powder and projectile are pushed to the rear. Sight the P. The gunner comes forward, inserts the stadia sight for the sighting. Number 4 goes to the trail.
The piece is sighted. Prime.
Number 3 pokes a hole in the sack of gunpowder. Number 4 steps forward with the lanyard friction primer attached. All the men step outside the wheels.
Ready? Fire.
Boom. That's the way they trained over and over and over again. Every man knowing every command, so that when they got to the battlefield, this is the way it worked. With cartridge, without detail. Commence firing.
With cartridge. Without detail. Commence firing. Load.
That pump is air rushing back into the tube.
Ready? Fire.
Whoa.
Cease firing. Clear the P.
That's what a half charge of gunpowder sounds like. When we're on the battlefield and there might be 20 or 30 cannons in the line, the cannons are set so that, for instance, the gun that's on my right side, his number 2 man is probably standing right here. And that's how close the 2 guns are. So you have to, you watch number 1 and number 2, when they took their step and they covered, they looked at the flame coming out of the barrel. With that many cannons going off, the only way you know that yours went off is to see that flame. When he pulled the sponge out, you hear the thump. That's a good sign. We want to hear that. That is air rushing, the sound of air rushing back into a vacuum. And we know that inside a vacuum, no fire can exist. So we know that it's safe to put the gunpowder down. Secure implements.
Secure implements.
You're welcome to come forward. You can put your hands on it, take a look at it. We'll talk to you about the cannon and you can see what it looks like up close.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, we did it over at Camp Ridley. People said
coffee.
Well, as long as it wasn't the pie,
Yeah. Yeah, that would really be
that would
bad.
have been worse.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
Way up on the mountain, hear my horn a blow. Thought I heard my true love say I'm coming for my bow. Run mountain, run mountain, run mountain. Now you get your fill.